Bien, Valentin. Voilà, c'est là, là.
Hi everyone, thank you for having us. This talk is about preparing a Blender pipeline for 52 times 11 minutes TV series. We are from France. The studio is called Cube Creative. We've been around for 17 years now. And let's just show the showreel of our studio.
Hey, did I ever tell you about the time I worked with Elmer Fudd?
Oh, honestly, Martin, you told me that story so many times.
It's good. I forget.
Okay, go ahead. Just tell it again.
That is constantly changing. Always rearranging. Always rearranging.
Oh, man.
Thank you. So I am Valentin Moriceau. I'm the head of R&D of the studio. I'm gonna do the introduction of this talk and the conclusion also, and about how it happened inside the R&D, we decided to do the switch to Blender.
And I'm Tanguy Weyland. I work at Cube Creative as a CG supervisor. And today I will be talking about the specific challenges we faced while working on our first projects using Blender.
So what we do, like I said, we've been around for 17 years now. We've used a lot of different softwares. We've had Lightwave, Maya, XSI. And for the past few years, we've been focusing on 3ds Max to have only one main software. But we recently decided to switch to Blender. It's about a year ago. What we do is mainly TV series. We have IPs, and we work also as an outsourcing studio. You may know us for Kailu. The 4th season is already in production right now. There is the 2nd season of Athleticus in production right now also. And for example, we've worked with Rovio for the Piggy Tales and the Stella series. We also do commercials in 3D, 2D, in cartoon, realistic styles. And we also do on-site experiences like theme parks and 360 experiences. We did 2 clips for an attraction in the Wallaby theme parks. We did the first Soarin' in Europe for the Futuroscope, and some 360 experiences for different brands. What's next for us? We have, like I said, decided to switch to Blender, and we have 3 TV series that are 52 times 11 minutes long. This first series is developed with a French TV channel. It's called Pirate. It's the adventures of young people in an inflatable world. They're in the pirate school. We have another series that we are currently developing with another French TV channel, which is called Tangre Animals. It's a young adventurer who explore geometrical worlds to simplify things. And the third project is currently in production. It's work for hire for Thuristar and La Cabane Production. And it's called Mush Mush and the Mushables. 3 of those projects are 52 times 11 minutes. And we decided to make those 3 projects with Blender. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So why did we decide that? Because Blender is open source, and open source has been present within the studio for a long time because we have R&D for a long time. And once you code, you are confronted to open source because everything is open source almost when you code. So this is something we're already confronted to. And also, for the past few years, formats have been open to. We have OpenAlembic, OpenEXR, and so on. So open source is around. We feel also that a foundation is not a pension fund. It's something that will probably lead to a better investment towards the the good things, because we hope that the quality of the product will be better if it's not a pension fund, because someone's wallet is not involved. We also think that technology should be more sustainable. For example, Blender could not be killed the way XSI was killed, because the code is always free in both synths. And also because debugging is easier when you can build a debug version of a program. All the packages that we know have an API and a strong community, and it's also true for Blender. It's even truer because the community is very, very vivid. And that's something that really reassures us also. Like I said, for the past year, we invested a lot of time and resources into switching to Blender, but we know that a new software integration always takes time. So we decided to do this with a free software, because we believe that in the long term it will be less expensive. And also, and that's my favorite reason, is because it's an excellent reason to revise the pipeline. You always want to revise the pipeline, but you never have the occasion to do so because you're always in production and things are working, kind of. So now that we have to rebuild things from scratch, it's very, very pleasant to be able to rethink things, to throw what was wrong, and to try to build things in a better way with the experience we have from what we've done before.
Thank you, Valentin.
Thank you.
So this frame is from a test we did for our project Pirate. It was our first project rendered in Blender. However, as our animation tools and custom rigs were not at that time up to the quality of the one we had in 3ds Max, we decided to stick with 3ds Max for the animation part, and we transferred the animated geometry to Blender, where we did the shading, lighting, and rendering with Cycle, and the few special effects. The compositing was done in Nuke, because we only had less than a month to create this teaser. So we really had to stay efficient, and in order to do that, we chose to rely on our in-house workflow and custom tools we already had in Nuke. So now we're just going to show you the teaser. Thank you very much. So now I will talk about the challenges we had to face during those first projects. Some of those challenges are technical, some of those are artistic challenges. And to illustrate my speech, I will do a short case study of our third project, which is Mush Mush and the Mushables. So first of all, the technical challenges. So making 3 TV series is basically making a huge amount of footage. As Valentin told us, the 3 series are 52 episodes long, and each episode lasts 11 minutes. This makes a total of a bit more than 28 hours of footage. And to give you an idea, it's roughly 2.5 million frames to render. So that maybe helps you understand why we really want to try to keep our render times very low. In the TV series field, the budgets and the schedules are often very tight. So this requires a lot of automation. The idea behind this is that we really want artists working at Cube Creative to not to have to worry about technical problems or technical details, so they can focus on the creative part of their job. This is very important to us. And another challenge is we had to stick to the 2.7 version. This is because we decided to switch to Blender from 3ds Max around a year ago. And so we already invested a lot of time and effort building tools and thinking about our new pipeline. And we cannot afford to switch from one version of Blender to another during such a production. So this has been quite frustrating, especially when we were keeping a close eye on the new features that would come with 2.8, but that's a challenge of ours. Also, most of our tools and our softwares use Python 2 and PySide, such as Houdini, Nuke, 3ds Max, Maya. So when we built our tools, we tried to make them software agnostic, so cross-software, so we could use them in different softwares without to have to rewrite them from scratch. So in order to benefit from those tools inside Blender, we had to build a bridge between Python 2 and Python 3. However, some of those tools were very specific to a software. We wrote many tools to make 3ds Max production ready for our schedules and budgets. So we also had to write tools for Blender in the same way. So now for the artistic challenges. As for every of our projects at Cube Creative, we try to push the boundaries of the images we create. Sometimes this is through stylized rendering, which can be a greater challenge than realistic rendering because it involves research time, and you really want to be able to rely on a flexible workflow for shading and rendering. And for this kind of tasks, Cycles and Blender were a great help for us. And for our third project, so which is Mush Mush, today's case study, one of the challenges was the vegetation, as you can see on this image. So as Valentin told us, this image is from a project which is a work for hire for us. It's produced by Lacaban Production and 30star. And this frame is from a full turnaround of the sets we did as a test. Unfortunately, for legal reason, we're only able to show you a single frame today. But as soon as we can show you more content, we will show you more content. So this was a lighting and rendering test done to define with our clients the type of images we would be creating for them. And it was a great opportunity for us to build and to set up our brand new Blender pipeline. So this implied very heavy sets. So as you can imagine, we have a very high poly count, especially for the moss and the grass, and also a very high object count. So this meant that very early on, we knew we would have to rely on instances and proxies. We also made a great use of the particle system of Blender, and it's no secret that this part of Blender is a bit out of date, so we had to cope with a few incoherent behaviors, and it took us some time to figure out the specific way of doing things that would lead us to a stable particle system and a vegetation system that would fit our needs. On the other hand, the memory footprint usage is very good in Blender and in cycles when using instances. And that was a lifesaver for us when we were trying to render very heavy scenes with a huge amount of objects and polygon. So that was a pro point of using Blender for this project. So as you can see, we tried to keep our viewport very light in order to keep it also responsive, because we want our layout artists and animators to be able to work in those Blender files without having to deal with very heavy and slow scenes. So we only displayed the largest ferns, the larger grass strands, and rough shapes to indicate where would be the most patches. And also, one of the first things you think about when trying to optimize a scene is not create and not model anything that is out of the field of the camera. So what you see on this viewport is the bare minimum we had to create to do our turnaround of the set. So for this project, we had really high visual expectation, and it was through the amount of small details that we had to put in the picture. So even though the memory footprint was not a problem, we had quite some trouble with the sampling, and we had trouble reducing our render times to get rid of the noise in the vegetation. So we had to find the right balance in detail scale between a frame we could render and detail amount that would be suitable for close shots that we would need in the series. The volumetric light effects were also a challenge, because we could not afford to render physically based volumetric effects, and we wanted a system that would allow us to have large camera movements around the parts of the sets. So we had to find a clever way with rigging and texture on polygons to find a system that would hold up to our project. We also are aiming for this project at realistic shading, even though many of the shapes are stylized. Most of the picture is occupied by vegetation, and that implied that most of our objects have subsurface scattering. So we made heavy use of the principal shader, which was a great thing for us because it was very easy and straightforward to get convincing results with SSS. On the other hand, we struggled a bit with AOVs, custom AOVs, because at that point, Cycles does not allow yet to render custom AOVs without rebuilding the scene for each render layer. And that becomes tricky when you try to reduce render time on a very heavy scene. So we had to find some workaround. But on the larger picture, we were very happy to be able to benefit from Cycle's intuitive shading workflow, because we found out it was flexible and stable and very straightforward. And we really enjoyed working on shading in Blender. So we are very eager to dive into this project furthermore. And we are quite happy now with the result we've got with Blender, and really confident that we will find in Blender the tools we need to create all our projects. So I'll let Valentin continue.
Thank you. Open source and R&D. R&D was a lot, our department was involved a lot during this integration of Blender to our pipeline. We did things, we planned to do things, and also questions are arising. What we did is first spend about a year ago a week with Julien Durour, who might be here. Yes. Yeah. Merci. Thank you. Because we had a week with him, so he trained us to rigging in Blender, and it was really, really interesting and incredible for us to be able to transfer what we had in Max inside Blender, because our animators are used to a certain workflow that we've built in Max, and we're very happy to be able to transfer this and to improve it for Blender, because most of the time animation is half of the time and half of the budget of the production, so it's a really crucial part for us. Like Tanguy said, there is a lot of vegetation in the project, so we had to create some small helper tools to help instance particles on surfaces, define their densities, paint their densities, and put objects on it. So we had to write some tools to fluidify this workflow. And also because for now Blender is a binary file format, we had to write some data exporter, importer in order to integrate it from one task to another, but also with other tools of the pipeline like Substance or Nuke and so on, for example. What we did also is a tool that allows our layout artists to start with a scene that is already populated with assets that have been broken down by production. So once we get the animatics, Assistant Production Manager, they fill the breakdown list, and then the layout artist can directly import all those assets automatically. That's a real time saver. We also improved and ported our sanity check inside Blender because we rely a lot on automation. So if something goes wrong because there is a small mistake or something that went wrong during production, and we just realized that few days or few hours later, because all the process was broken, we lost a lot of time. So we want to be able to anticipate that. So we have a sanity check that we have strengthened. So in order to prevent as much as possible those kind of mistakes and waste of time. And also about 8 months ago, an intern joined us. He came to us because he knew that we were switching to Blender and he wanted to be really involved in that. And he did. He helped us a lot during this period. And for about 2 or 3 weeks, he's now a full-time employee at Cube. He knows C++, and we hope that someday he will become a Blender developer. So that's really exciting for us. And what we plan to do is to push the painting tool to a higher level. We want it to be a software agnostic asset manager, because we have a kind of version of that, but we want to push it forward. We want to be able to choose the maps, the animation clips, the textures, the objects, to paint them, to import them, to export them between software. So this is a huge project for us that is really interesting. We want to improve the bridge between the DCCs, for example, with a Substance. For now, we don't have a fluid workflow between Blender and Substance, and it's something that we want to have. And again, pushing the animation tools, because that's really, really important for us. That's the main part of what we do. There are 3 types of questions that are arising when you switch to a full proprietary pipeline to a hybrid pipeline like we did. There's the question of training that has been said a lot, and the technological value for the studio, and the legal questions about sharing. About the training, we are confident that it's going to be fine, because for now, animators have been able to switch softwares quite easily without much pain, and the shading and lighting workflow we discovered in Blender is quite intuitive. So we don't think that it's going to be a problem to teach and to train our artists to switch to Blender. And regarding the other 2 aspects, I think that, like you said, Ton, at the beginning of the week, a lot of French studios are switching to Blender, and we're already talking to each other, trying to make this open source thing happen. And I think it's a great perspective for us. Right now, all the questions have not been answered, but we are going to solve this, and maybe Blender will be the place where everything blends technologically. And so that's why you named it. And it will only be artistic questions, and what's the style of the studio, what is it good at, and not they have a good rig or they have a good pipeline. I think that's how we all are going to improve our way of work. So that's it. Thank you very much. We have 1 minute left. I could say hi to anyone in the kitchen at Cube who is watching us. Salut. If you want to check out our GitHub, it is there. There are a few tools that we wanted to share. There is a small launcher that we call Jean-Paul Start. You can try it if you want. And small tools, small add-ins for Blender. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.